A recent episode of the Game of Thrones prequel was apparently so dark that fans couldn't even understand what was being shown on the screen. Hey, we know the show is quite brutal, but this is a whole new kind of dark. And now, HBO has defended the difficult to see scenes. In today's video, we'll discuss their statement, and also go over 5 movies that are literally too dark. So let's dive right in. First off, HBO defended the dark scenes from House of the Dragon on Twitter. Episode 7 of House of the Dragon had a lot going on, but if you struggled to understand most of it, we wouldn't blame you. Many fans complained that the nighttime shots featured in the episode made it tough to see. Some even took to Twitter, with one user stating that House of the Dragon has continued the tradition of Thrones episodes being so dark that they're almost unwatchable. Another Twitter user jokingly stated that they'd need a written apology from HBO Max over how black the episode was. To this, the official HBO Max help account replied with an interesting statement. The account stated that they appreciated fans for their concerns, but the darker setting of the episode wasn't an actual issue. The dimmed lighting of the scene was an intentional creative decision. So yeah, if you're worried that your television stopped working midway through the episode, rest assured. The choice to make you have to turn up your brightness to 200% was apparently intentional. Next, what has the fan reaction been to the dark episode? Of course, fans didn't really like this statement. Just because it was intended doesn't mean that the end result was great. A Twitter user posted multiple shots from the episode to highlight just how difficult to see it really was. The entire nighttime sequence after Laena's funeral looked like it's cloaked in shadow. The problem is that it's a pretty long scene too. We saw Rhaenyra and Daemon rekindle their passion for each other as they met after many years. Plus, there's the whole epic scene of Aemon claiming Vhagar as his own. These are really important scenes, and the fact that fans struggled to see anything is probably why there was such a strong reaction from them. Some fans also pointed towards other films like Nope, which have similarly had a lot of dark nighttime shots. But despite this, it was quite clear to make out what was going on in the movie, because the lighting in the scenes was handled excellently. Putting the two side by side really does highlight that maybe the fans are in the right this time. That said, some people did defend the episode and stated that it's not the episode's fault, that most of the audience is watching on old TVs or on their phones. It's true that on a modern OLED display, the episode looks better, but we doubt the difference is enough to change the overall muddy and gray look of the scenes. Plus, this isn't really the first time Game of Thrones has had a problem with too much darkness. If you're a long-time Game of Thrones fan, you might recall that this isn't the first time the series has suffered from a case of too dark to see disease. Back in season 8 of Thrones, the Long Night episode also had visuals that had fans complaining about how dark they were. Most of that episode was shot at night, with the armies of Westeros gathered and waiting to fight against the White Walkers. It makes sense why the brightness would be a bit lower than usual, but fans were literally struggling to understand who died and who survived, so you know there was a problem. Interestingly, both House of the Dragons episode 7 and Game of Thrones Long Night episode were directed by Miguel Sapochnik. It seems that it's just his directorial style to have super dark scenes that make you want to get a better TV. Fans noted his strong involvement in both these episodes, and now think that maybe HBO's defense of it's an intentional choice may be true after all. But as we said earlier, just because it's intentional doesn't mean it's good. A fan posted on Twitter that Miguel is an amazing director, but House of the Dragon's 7th episode is still some of the worst nighttime photography they'd ever seen. Maybe a bit hyperbolic, but we can definitely understand where they were coming from. Moving on, here's what Miguel had to say the last time fans had this complaint. Back in 2019, when fans were up in arms about Game of Thrones Long Night episode being tough to see, Miguel addressed their complaints in an interview with IndieWire. The director stated that everyone who was working on the episode was making it with the thought that it was indeed supposed to be hard to see. They were apparently embracing the darkness, whatever that means. The director continued that he can't control what people watch the TV show on. He's never made anything that's supposed to be seen on an iPhone. All his work is made to be watched in the largest format possible and to be experienced alongside other people. The Long Night was apparently intended to be seen in a cinema with as many people as you could possibly stick in a single room, and so he doesn't really have a solution for the problem that many people had with the episode. Look, we love Miguel. His work, especially as the showrunner of House of the Dragon, is a big part of why the series turned out so amazing. But come on, surely there's a better alternative to the episode episodes being too dark, then just watch it in a cinema. The part that Sapochnik said about being unable to control where people watch the series isn't wrong though, and it's true that the dimmer lighting added a sense of mystery and intrigue to both The Long Night and House of the Dragon's 7th episode. And with that, let's discuss some movies that are literally too dark to see. Our 5th darkest movie is Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Godzilla, King of the Monsters aimed to answer the main complaint fans had with the 2014's Godzilla film. This was that there wasn't enough Godzilla in the movie. Godzilla, King of the Monsters featured 4 giant monsters, including Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan. But it failed to deal with the other major issue the 2014 movie had, and this was the movie did a poor job at lighting up the scenes. Most of the sequences of the monsters fighting each other were incredibly tough to see, and while some momentary bursts of atomic breath or lightning did make them a bit easier, they were still far from great. At number 4, we've got Solo, a Star Wars story. Han Solo's prequel had a couple of problems, not the smallest of which were its terrible cinematography and lighting. These were apparently even worse in cinemas. People who had the displeasure of seeing it in the theater stated that the entire movie was too dark, dirty, and ugly looking. This had something to do with Solo's specific lighting requirement, which most modern automated projectors couldn't handle properly. Next, at number 3, there's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Harry Potter films gradually got darker and darker, starting from the Goblet of Fire, and all of it culminates in the finale, The Deathly Hallows Part 2, which is so dark that you'll likely need to turn up the brightness and color on your TV screens to find out what's going on. The film was terribly lit, which made the epic conclusion between the wizards and the Death Eaters a bit of a letdown. At number 2, we've got Zack Snyder's Justice League. Fans felt utterly robbed when it turned out that the 2017's Justice League had been turned around and changed into something that Snyder never intended. For the longest time, fans of the director banded together to get his true vision of the movie brought to the big screens. And finally, in 2021, that's exactly what happened. But Snyder's version of the Justice League was really dark, in more ways than one. The movie seemed to have taken away most of the color and brightness that Joss Whedon added to the 2017's version. The end result was that a lot of the scenes felt a bit colorless and dark. Hey, maybe that's the look that Snyder was going for, and it did look marginally better than the theatrical cut's oversaturated color palette. Finally, at number 1 of our darkest movies is Alien vs. Predator, Requiem. One of the biggest constraints for the Alien vs. Predator movie was the fact that it had a PG-13 rating. A movie about 2 famously bloodthirsty creatures going at it couldn't be too violent. Got it. Makes total sense. To deal with this problem, the film's sequel was R-rated, but it had the problem of being way too dark. Because of this, most of the kills and gore were too tough to really see and enjoy. Some people even regarded the film's cinematography as the all-time worst. All the poor creative decisions aside, the sequel's lighting budget may have been what ultimately made it such a disappointment. That's a wrap for this video. What are your thoughts on HBO's response to the fans' complaints about House of the Dragon's dark scenes? Comment below, give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.